question time. Just wait for members to take their seats quickly and quietly. Sitting on the floor of the parliament today is Uncle John Pry-Sidden, a Wallumbirri artist living and working in Fitzroy Crossing, a remote Kimberley town east of Broome, Western Australia. And as part of National Reconciliation Week, Australian Parliament House will be illuminated with Uncle John's work, Numbat Night, from 6 p.m. tomorrow. Welcome, Uncle John. We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. There are nearly 3 million hard-working small and family businesses in Australia. Will the Albanese government carve out the hairdressers, builders, gyms, pharmacies, vets, dentists, landscapers or childcare operators from your broken promises and higher taxes?
Order. Members on my right will cease interjecting. The member for Griffith. Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Small business are already eligible for 4 different concessions.
You don't mention any of that.
And none of them have changed. None of them whatsoever have changed. And that's why, in addition to that, some of them...
The member for KC. We're just going to reset. This continual yelling right on my doorstep is well beyond the pale. So, the Leader of the Opposition was heard in silence. Can everyone just take a breath, reset and just listen to the Prime Minister and show some respect? The Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. In addition to that, in the budget we announced $3.5 billion in new measures that lower taxes for businesses to encourage investment and innovation,
Minister for Infrastructure.
making the $20,000 instant asset write-off permanent, something that's never been done before. Introducing a permanent 2-year loss carryback to support resilience, investment and risk-taking. Introducing loss refundability to help start-ups grow in their first years. Expanding tax incentives for venture capital to unlock patient capital for young expanding firms. And better targeting, in addition to all that, better targeting the research and development tax incentive. Mr Speaker, that's why the Council of Small Business, for example, said about the instant asset write-off, it gives...
Order.
It can't possibly...
The Prime Minister is just going to pause. The question was about the carving out of businesses and the higher taxes, but I'll listen to the Leader of the Opposition.
Relevance, Mr Speaker. The question was about broken promises and higher taxes, and he had...
I'll hear from the Leader of the House.
Mr Speaker, 2 things. Obviously, one of them is that was a clear and deliberate abuse of the point of order. The second is, in terms of relevance, the first sentence of that question was this: there are nearly 3 million hard-working small and family businesses in Australia. The answer being given could not be more than relevant.
Order. Members on my right, the Chief Government Whip. We're going to do this in an orderly way, and we'll hear from, on the point of order.
Order that the manager of business of the House made. There is a specific question at the end, and that's what we... at the end. We're allowed to... You can't just have a question mark. You can't just have a question mark. You have to be able to ask the question. And it's question time.
I thank the manager of opposition business for that assistance. Order. We'll deal with the Leader of the Opposition's point of order and the Leader of the House's response. Obviously, there was a question in there, but all speakers, since the beginning of question time, have never confined the answer because the standing orders require the Prime Minister to be... You've raised the point of order. I'm dealing with your point of order, Leader of the Opposition, so there's no point yelling at me. So the standing orders provide for the Prime Minister to be directly relevant. You would like a yes-no answer? You would like a direct answer? I don't have the powers to direct the Prime Minister to do that. All members, I think, are aware of that. The Prime Minister is talking about exactly what he was asked about, so he is being directly relevant. He has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I was asked about the small business and the impact of the budget, and I'm precisely doing that. And the worse he's going, the more he interjects, Mr Speaker. But the fact is—
Order. Members on my left. The Minister for Resources, Prime Minister, is just going to continue. Order. Just leave the opposition, take a breath.
It's just non-stop.
Prime Minister can continue. Order. The Treasurer is not helping the situation. Prime Minister in continuation.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. In the budget we announced $3.5 billion of support for small business, and they don't want to hear about it. They want to write it off as if it didn't happen, because it doesn't fit the rhetoric of the three right-wing parties and their allies, Mr Speaker. This is what the Council of Small Business had to say. It gives small business the opportunity to plan ahead, to plan their investments and how they are going to grow.
Which was in the budget.
In the budget. The NFF, just one for the Nats. It's a simple and effective measure that helps farmers reduce costs and increase their productivity. ACCI. Many small business owners will be pleased to see this measure made permanent. Over and over, Mr Speaker, the measures that we put forward right across the sector.
The member for Forest and the member for Maranoa.
Right across the sector, Mr Speaker. And the worse they're going, the louder they get. This is a mob who think the future is making Tony Abbott the President of the Liberal Party.
Order. And the House comes to order. We shall hear from the honourable member for Canberra.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government's budget helping young Australians who aspire to own a home of their own? Why is this important, and are there any alternative approaches to housing policy?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Canberra for her question. And last week we were with the member for Canberra and the Treasurer and the Housing Minister in the home in Kingston of Matt Meeker and Pikelet, because the aspiration of home ownership is right at the heart of the budget that we delivered last week, something that is the fundamental aspiration that Australians have. They have it not only for themselves, they have it for their kids and their grandkids. And the truth is that over the years, more and more, it's not just young people. Yeah, it has got harder. That's the point. That's what we're fixing it. That's what we're fixing.
Order.
I take the interjection from the member for Page. It has got harder over many years, particularly since 1999, where prices have gone up by more than double the level of wages since 1999. And for so many young people, but also parents and grandparents who worry that their kids will never get into a home of their own. And that is in part because a young person going up for an auction is standing at the auction competing with an investor going for their 5th or their 10th house or what have you. And they have a huge advantage over the first home buyer. That is just the truth. And what we have done is change the system so that if people want to invest, good on them, they can still do so, but they'll be investing not only in their wealth and their future assets, they'll be investing in the wealth and assets of the nation. Something that's been called for and acknowledged by some of those opposite, including the Shadow Treasurer, of course. And last night, more Australians were on the 7:30 report, talking about their own experience. And a young couple were there who bought their first home in an auction in Sydney on Saturday for even less than they had budgeted. Now, that couple didn't come up against property investors with an unfair tax advantage. The young man, Sebastian, said he was shocked and stunned that they won at all. But that is what the reform is about, making sure that young Australians can have the reality of home ownership, not a dream that can't be fulfilled, but a reality. So every Australian can aspire, not just some, for a roof over their head. Aspiration for all, not just for some. That is what we stand for, and that is what our budget delivers.
Call to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. I ask again, will the Prime Minister just be honest with Australians and tell us which small businesses will be carved out from Labor's broken promises and higher taxes?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much. We support small business, and that's precisely why we had $3.5 billion of investment to assist small business in our budget. That's why, as well, in our budget we had, of course, tax cuts again, making 5 lots of tax cuts, helping people who are in small business to go ahead. And that is, as well, in addition to the tax cut that we have coming in on July 1, and then the tax cut next July 1, and the legislation that we'll be bringing in to the Parliament on Thursday that will include, of course, our instant tax deduction, making an enormous difference going forward. And when it comes to small businesses, Mr Speaker, it isn't just the ones that I named as well. The Housing Industry Association have said this: making the instant asset write-off permanent gives housing businesses, of which are a major part of small business, the confidence to invest, grow and lift productivity. Business New South Wales: we welcome the government delivering stability for small and medium businesses. Mr Speaker, right across the board we have received support.
Order. The Leader of the Opposition, a point of order.
Yeah, relevance, Mr Speaker. I don't know how much more specific you can be than to ask which small businesses will be carved out from Labor's broken promises and higher taxes.
Yeah, as we've indicated before, you'd like a list read out to the House, I'm assuming, right? You would like a no. Well, no. You said something relevant. Great. The Prime Minister is talking about the small businesses that he was talked about. Order. I can't, unfortunately, deliver what you would like. But if he wasn't talking about small business that he was asked about, he wouldn't be directly relevant. So he is being directly relevant. We can keep going down this path. But that is the standing orders. If you wish to change the standing orders, you're entitled to do so. But as they stand now, this is the way that question time has always operated. The Prime Minister has the call.
Mr Speaker, what I'm talking about is the lower taxes we're introducing for small business. The lower taxes for small business. Some of those opposite don't seem to acknowledge even exists, whether it's the instant asset write-off, the permanent 2-year loss carryback, the loss refundability to help start-ups, expanding tax incentives for venture capital, or better targeting the research and development tax incentive. All of those are aimed very directly at supporting small business, because we do support small business. We do support as well the opportunity of young people getting a roof over their head, something that those opposite do not support. They support entrenching inequality. We support aspiration for all.
Give a call to the member for Bennelong.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. How will the Albanese Labor government's tax cuts and tax reforms help Australians, and how does that compare to other approaches?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thanks to the member for Bennelong for his important question and for all of his work. This government is cutting taxes for workers 5 times in 3 different ways, Mr Speaker. We cut taxes in our first term. There's another tax cut in July, another one the July after that. And on Thursday we will introduce legislation to cut income taxes a 4th and a 5th time as well, Mr Speaker. And that's because that legislation includes a $1,000 instant deduction and also the Working Australian tax offset. Our tax cuts mean that an average worker could be up to $2,800 better off in the year that these tax cuts are implemented. So the legislation on Thursday includes those new tax cuts, and it includes the changes we are making to negative gearing and capital gains. And this legislation is all about making it easier to own a first home, better aligning the tax treatment for workers and asset owners, and also funding these tax cuts. Now, the reason these 4 elements are all together is because the negative gearing and capital gains tax changes fund the tax cuts for workers and for small businesses. The package is broadly revenue neutral over the 4 years, and that's why these measures are all in together. By passing the core elements of the package quickly, we will give the market some certainty about the major changes while we consult on the implementation details flagged in the budget. Now, this is not unusual, Mr Speaker. The Howard government's GST reforms required more than 30 bills, Mr Speaker. And when it came to the capital gains tax changes in 1999, also around 30 bills, Mr Speaker. So this legislation on Thursday is a test for the coalition.
Member for Maranoa, Member for Goldstein, Member for Gippsland, that yelling is completely, well, unprofessional, but it's also against the standing orders. So you're warned. Member for Goldstein, I assume you want the MPI to proceed. So everyone will be clear. Any more interjections? There won't be an MPI today, because that yelling is unacceptable. So there won't be an MPI if the member for Goldstein interjects any more. Consequences for actions. The Treasurer has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This legislation is a test for the coalition, and it's a test that they have failed before. It beggars belief to remember that in the first term, the big 2 mistakes that they made in the first term, because of the genius of the member for Hume, was to vote against tax cuts and to block housing for Australians, Mr Speaker. Now, they are showing all of the signs of repeating the exact same 2 mistakes that they made in the first term, Mr Speaker. They haven't learned a thing, and they haven't changed a bit since the member for Hume convinced them in the last parliament to vote against the tax cuts that this government was putting in place. He got it badly wrong the first time, and it looks like he's going to repeat the mistake, Mr Speaker. So let me be very clear. If they vote against this legislation, they are voting for higher income taxes once again. They are voting to make it harder for people to buy their first home. And when people are crying out for change in the housing market and in the tax system, they would be clinging to and voting for a broken status quo that is locking too many young Australians out of housing, Mr Speaker. They should vote for the tax cuts that working Australians need and deserve, that this government is determined to give them.
Before I call the member for Clark, I'll just do some quick acknowledgements to the gallery today. I'm pleased to inform the House that Mr Stefan Löfven, the former Prime Minister of Sweden, is with us today, accompanied by Giacomo Filibeck, and also Dr Glenn Greensmith, a Senior Lecturer in Journalism at Curtin University, is a guest of the member for Fremantle. And also present in the gallery today is a Maronite youth delegation, as guests of the members for Parramatta, the Leader of the House and the member for Mitchell, and accompanied by Bishop Tarabay. Welcome to Question Time. Call to the Honourable Member Clark.
Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Veterans Affairs. Minister, the Defence and Veterans Workshop in Hobart has supported serving and ex-serving personnel since 1980. It's an essential service and more important than ever if the government's fair dinkum about addressing the Defence and Veteran Royal Commission's findings. But, Minister, the workshop will be homeless if Derwent Barracks is sold off. So what will you do about that? Does the government commit to ensuring the workshop remains in situ or is funded to secure a new facility?
The call to the Minister for Veterans Affairs and the Minister for Defence Personnel.
Well, thank you, Speaker. And can I thank the member for Clark for his ongoing support for the Veterans Workshop and for the veterans in his community. Of course, thank him for his service in the Australian Army as well. The Defence and Veteran Workshop that the member mentioned at Derwent Barracks has been supporting our current and former serving defence community for decades, and they are a great facility that is providing a place for local veterans not just to go and to connect, but to learn a new skill as well, and we've discussed that before. And we as a government are focused on wellbeing support for our veterans at all life stages, and that is something that was emphasised by the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide. So I'm pleased to be able to assure the member that our government is fair dinkum about addressing the recommendations of the Royal Commission. We've already implemented 32 of the recommendations of the Royal Commission by the end of last year, and by the end of this year we're on track to have implemented 2/3 of those recommendations. Now, the independent Defence Estate Audit found that many defence properties have no clear or ongoing link to our capability needs for keeping our nation safe, and we need to make sure that our defence estate is fit and proper for our ADF. In making sure we get this right, my good friend the Assistant Minister for Defence has been working his way around the country, consulting with those that are impacted by the Defence Estate Audit. And they are not consultations that are about setting or forgetting. He's held a town hall in Hobart, and as a result of the feedback from the local community, the Defence and Veteran Workshop will remain on-site at the Derwent Barracks. I'm pleased that the Prime Minister was able to confirm this when he was in Hobart with Premier Rockcliffe the weekend before last. We're working through the divestment of the site and those around the country very carefully. We're going to continue to consult with defence personnel, with veterans, with reservists, the wider community and, of course, the families of cadets that may be impacted. It's important that we get this right, and keeping the workshop on-site at Derwent is a key part of doing that.
Give a call to the honourable member for Jagga Jagga.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing. How have experts and advocates received the Albanese Labor government's housing reform package to help first home buyers? Is the Minister aware of any alternative approaches to these reforms?
Call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Thank you so much, Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Jagga Jagga for her question. I was in her electorate with the Prime Minister just a week ago, visiting some of the 743 social and affordable homes that we are building in the great part of Jagga Jagga, Speaker. Now, Speaker, Australians have got a housing system that's stacked against them. We want Australians to get ahead, and we want them particularly to do it in a home that they own. But in today's market, Speaker, there is nothing but heartbreak in housing for the young people of this country. They are doing all the right things, Speaker. They are studying longer than ever, they are working harder than ever, they are saving longer than ever, and yet still they're turning up to auctions and more often than not getting outbid by investors standing next to them who are backed in by the Australian taxpayer. Speaker, our government wants something pretty simple and straightforward for our country, and that is for Australia to be a place where citizens on every income level can aspire to home ownership and realise that dream for themselves and their families. Speaker, we want to live in a country where housing is fair to Australians. That's all. And that's why we're standing up and changing the housing system of our country. Now, Speaker, we're doing that through backing in first home buyers through the 5% deposit program, and we're levelling the playing field at auctions. And experts, economists and housing advocates are backing in the effect of these reforms. Economist Sol Eslake has said the reforms will create more opportunities for aspiring first home buyers. National Shelter said the budget begins to rebalance the system back towards first home buyers, renters and the delivery of new homes. And former New South Wales Liberal Minister Rob Stokes, who's now at Faith Housing Australia, said Australia should not be a country where the system makes it easier to accumulate multiple investment properties than it is for young people to own their first home. Finally, Speaker, a Liberal of this country who gets it. Now, Rob Stokes can see what I can see, what the Prime Minister can see and what everyone behind me can see, and that is that the status quo cannot continue. Something had to change, and that's why we're standing up and changing it. Now, Speaker, importantly, we are continuing to support investment in new housing supply. If you are a young person in this country and you want to get ahead, we want to support you to do it. And if you want to do it through property, you can still get access to those generous housing concessions. But what we ask is that you do something for the country, and that is build a desperately needed new home. Speaker, I'm asked about alternatives, and the Coalition are the only people I can find in our country today who are continuing to defend the broken status quo. They are the only people who feel no sense of sympathy for the young people of our country who are suffering and the parents and the grandparents who are worried about them. Speaker, we've got a clear plan to deliver a fairer housing system for the country, and on Thursday we're going to start legislating to make it happen.
Call to the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Prime Minister, which small businesses will be carved out from your capital gains tax increases?
Give call to the Prime Minister.
As I've said before to the Leader of the Opposition's questions, what we're doing is actually decreasing taxes for small business through our $3.5 billion of measures. That is what we are doing, which is why it's received such substantial support from so many industry sectors, including the Housing Industry Association, the Motor Trades Association, the National Farmers Federation, the Business Council of Australia, the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Business New South Wales, as well as, of course, the Council of Small Business. The Council of Small Business. Now, what we are doing through this $3.5 billion of tax decreases for small businesses, providing them with incentives moving forward.
Has the Prime Minister concluded his answer? Okay, the Manager of Opposition Business on a point of order.
Yeah, it goes to relevance. We couldn't ask a tighter question. The Prime Minister said yesterday it was time to be honest with the Australian people.
I thank the Manager, just reminding him and the Leader all you need to do is state the issue of relevance, which is fine, which you're entitled to do. The Prime Minister, and don't need extra words, that's abuse of the standing orders, but we're going to continue to listen to the Prime Minister, but he needs to make his answer directly relevant regarding the question he was asked about regarding capital gains tax increases on small businesses, carve-outs that he was asked about. But as I said, I know you're after a list. I can't compel the Prime Minister to do that. I know. Yeah. I can compel the Prime Minister to be directly relevant to the question, and that's what he's doing at the moment.
Mr Speaker, it's precisely what I'm doing. I've firstly outlined the reductions in small business taxation and the measures which are there, $3.5 billion of support. Now, we are also changing the capital gains tax regime to go back to 1999, and as those opposite know in their heart, that results in different results for some, depending upon the circumstances. What we're moving for is one lot of discounts to another lot of discounts. We're moving towards a system that was in place, since 1999 to tax real gains, not nominal gains. And what that does is produce fairer outcomes. What that does is to better treat income from assets with income from workers.
Before I call the member for Brisbane, I also note in the gallery today we have former US Ambassador and a member of this place, the Honourable Joe Hockey, and accompanied by Mick Mulvaney, the former Ambassador and former US Congressman. Welcome to Question Time. Give the call to the Honourable Member for Brisbane.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for the Environment. How is the Albanese Labor government helping boost housing supply by fast-tracking environmental approvals? Why is action to boost supply so desperately needed?
Call to the Leader of the House and the Minister representing the Minister for Environment and Water.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. And I thank the member for Brisbane and acknowledge the member for Brisbane as somebody who understands all too well the challenges of young people trying to find their home. Most homes don't need an environmental approval at a federal level. Most homes, you have the approval process go through local government and other procedures. but some housing developments do require a federal environmental approval. And unlocking this federal approval process has been one of the critical steps that this government's taken in being able to build more homes. The latest figures that have been released show the Albanese government is delivering housing approvals and has exceeded the target that it had set. Last year, after the Economic Reform Roundtable, this government established a housing strike team within the Environment Department to speed up housing approvals to help with the building of more homes. It set a target. It set a target to unlock 26,000 new homes, 26,000 new homes by July of this year. Already, we have succeeded in approvals not for 26,000, 35,500 new homes. 21 of those are metropolitan projects. Across those metropolitan projects, 20,000 homes. 13 of them are in the regions. Across those regional projects, 15,000 homes. That means 3,000 homes for Western Australia, 14,000 homes in New South Wales, and as the member for Brisbane has asked this question, 17,000 homes in Queensland unlocked because of this work. I'm asked why these reforms are desperately needed. At one point, under the previous government, in terms of how they were going with environmental approvals, at one point their percentage of approvals that were running on time, 6%. It got to as low as 6% of their approvals were running on time. Under this government, 93% of approvals running on time. And it's only happening because of the actions of the Albanese Labor government. We're building more homes and will continue to do so because we established the Housing Australia Future Fund, which they voted against. Because with the Housing Minister, the Treasurer, the Prime Minister, we established Build to Rent, which they voted against. We established 5% deposits, which they voted against. We've modernised our environment laws, which they voted against. And we're making tax changes to help give a chance for first home buyers, which they will vote against.
Before I call the member for Goldstein, the member for Lino counted interjected 14 times in that question, so she's had a good go. She'll leave the chamber under 94A. Consistent interjecting during one answer 14 times is potentially a record. Order. When the House comes to order. Order. Members on my right. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the Shadow Treasurer.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. I refer to the Prime Minister's answer yesterday about Janet's daughter who has Down syndrome. The Prime Minister claimed Janet's daughter was exempt because she was a vulnerable minor. She is not. She's an adult. Is the Prime Minister slugging Australians with disability with a new 30% death tax?
Call to the Prime Minister.
No.
Order. We'll give the order. Order. Members on my left. Order. The Treasurer. Order. When the House comes to order, the member for Canning will hear from the honourable member for Griffith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. What will today's default market offer mean for power prices? What policies are reducing the cost of power, and what policies would make power more expensive?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for the question. And as the honourable member indicates, today is the day where the default market offer final determination is released. It's a matter of law that it must go out today unless the minister intervenes and change the law. Something I have not done, but something one of my predecessors has done, Mr Speaker, on previous occasions. But there was no need for that today, Mr Speaker, because on that occasion a minister hit a 20% price rise. Today we have price reductions in every jurisdiction in Australia covered by the default market offer, Mr Speaker. And for the honourable member for Griffith, in the Energex jurisdiction, a 10.7% reduction for residences, a 14% reduction for small business. Now, Mr Speaker, in rural New South Wales, the area covered by Essential Energy, the members for Eden Monaro and Richmond are very pleased about this, but I think all honourable members should be, a small business reduction of up to 20.9%, Mr Speaker, in their energy bills. Now, the member asked me what has led to this, and there's really three reasons. It's no coincidence, Mr Speaker, that at the time we've hit 50% renewables in our grid, we are seeing energy prices come down. That's the first thing. Secondly, Mr Speaker, what we're doing is seeing more of that cheap renewable energy in the day stored for night time when prices go up, because what we see, Mr Speaker, is coal and gas setting the price at night time, which drives prices up. Batteries are now setting the price 30% of the time compared to 18% of the time just 12 months ago, Mr Speaker. The energy regulator said today, for example, the cheaper home battery policy is certainly, and I quote, certainly making the system cheaper, Mr Speaker. So when we get cheaper home batteries in, it reduces the bills for those households but reduces the bills for everybody. And indeed, the energy regulator has also said these reductions are being, and I quote, really driven by a big surge in batteries and solar into the system, which is displacing the need for more expensive gas-fired generation and hydro generation at peak times, Mr Speaker. So this is what is working. In addition, the Albanese government's reforms to the default market offer to strip out costs from energy companies and not allow them to claim them in the default market offer is making a difference. Now, the honourable member asked me what makes a difference. Well, what makes a difference is 414,396 cheaper home batteries that have now been installed under the Albanese government. 414,000 batteries, reducing prices for those households, but also reducing prices for everyone. What would not help is 22 failed energy policies. What would not help is sweating unreliable and expensive coal for longer. What would not help is $600 billion on a nuclear fantasy, Mr Speaker. They are all things that would not help. What is helping is cheaper renewable energy backed by batteries.
Call to the honourable member for Cowper.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Labor's budget of broken promises and higher taxes will cost my constituents Ross and Cynthia hundreds of dollars per year because of changes to private health insurance. Cynthia is recovering from breast cancer. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said it was time to be honest. Will the Prime Minister answer Cynthia and Ross's question? Why does the Prime Minister want to continue to push us by removing the rebate we desperately need?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. No one is removing the rebate. The premise of the question is completely wrong. And what is not appropriate is to come in here and to spread this sort of information through the Parliament of Australia.
Order. Members on my left. Members on my left. The member for Moncrief.
So it is very clear we are not removing the rebate. And in addition to that, what we are doing through a range of measures to assist Australians in that situation is reducing the price of medicines to $25, or if they are a pensioner or recipient, down to $7.70, which we're freezing since till 2030. We've increased the bulk billing rate so they get access to a GP up to above 80%, heading towards our target of 90% as well. We have $25 billion in this budget. The largest expenditure is for our new hospitals and health deal. All of these measures we have put in place to assist Australians right across the board, both in the member for Cowper's electorate, but right across the board as well.
The member for Groom will withdraw that.
I withdraw.
I thank the member for Groom. Call to the honourable member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And my question is to the Minister for Transport. How is the Albanese Labor government supporting the aviation industry to keep communities connected?
The member for Bowman will leave the chamber under 94A. You can't simply interject before a minister begins. That is highly disorderly and grossly disrespectful. Asking all members to show some constraint and some respect. To the call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And can I thank very much the member for Richmond for her question. She well knows the challenges that we all face because of the conflict in the Middle East that they're having on communities, but particularly to the aviation industry and the importance of that industry to keeping our communities connected. We are working very closely with the aviation industry to ensure that they do have the fuel they need to keep communities well connected, and Australians being able to do what they love, continue to travel, to spend time with families and connect for work. Last week, the government secured more than 100 million litres of jet fuel from China, resulting in 4 additional days of jet fuel being added to our national reserve. This happened not by accident, not because somehow or other China suddenly decided that they would supply that jet fuel, but it came because it has resulted as part of the government's work to stabilise relations with China. Our Prime Minister continues to have open and constructive conversations with Premier Li, and it has led to Australia being one of the few countries to secure additional jet fuel supplies because of the work on the relationship that we have done. It is these constructive relationships that continue to place Australia in the strongest possible position during times of uncertainty. It builds, of course, on those earlier announcements securing fuel supplies across Southeast Asia and bringing the total additional jet fuel secured to 200 million litres and 600 million litres for additional diesel. These shipments provide important certainty for the aviation industry. We continue to meet regularly with them to make sure that there is clear and consistent communication about our strategic reserves and that they are put to good use throughout this Middle Eastern conflict. But we also know that being entirely reliant on overseas jet fuel supplies is simply not sustainable. And right now, Aussie farmers are producing crops like canola, shipping it overseas to be turned into biofuels, only for us then to buy it back. And as I've said time and time again, this frankly is nuts. We should be producing sustainable aviation fuels here in Australia with Australian canola. It's why our government has made a $1.1 billion investment in developing an onshore sustainable aviation fuel industry. And it's not just in the fuel space that we're supporting aviation. We've worked quickly to ensure Rex could continue to operate through its administration and supported the successful sale. And on Sunday, I announced more than $4.8 million in support being delivered to local councils, regional and remote airports to ensure that the debts that they were owed by Rex were repaid so that those important local airports could continue to operate for the communities that they support. Keeping Australians connected, even in time of international uncertainty, is important work that the government is getting on with.
Call to the honourable member for Bradfield.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is for the Attorney-General. The Royal Commission into Anti-Semitism released its interim report last month. The government accepted all 14 of the report's recommendations. 5 of these recommendations are classified. Given that there is no way for us to know the nature and the content of these 5 classified recommendations, how can we, this parliament and its people, hold the government to account in implementing them?
Call to the Attorney-General.
I thank the member for her question, and indeed the Royal Commission did deliver its interim report to government on the 30th of April. The final report will be delivered on the 14th of December. The first hearing block of witnesses commenced on the 4th of May and the second block commenced yesterday. And I also want to put on the record again the appreciation of this parliament to members of the Jewish community who've given valuable evidence on their personal lived experiences of anti-Semitism. And thank those who've come forward to the now over 12,500 submissions that have been made. For the benefit of the member and the House, the Royal Commission has now established a dashboard tracking key elements of its proceedings, and I encourage members to visit that at asc.royalcommission.gov.au. On the issue the member raises of oversight of confidential recommendations in the interim report, the member is correct. Recommendations 8 to 12 of the interim report are indeed confidential. The government has accepted all recommendations relevant to the Commonwealth, and we will work with state and territory governments to adopt a national approach to implementing all 14 of those recommendations, including those which are confidential. For the benefit of the House, 2 versions of the interim report were presented by the Royal Commission. Firstly, a declassified version suitable for public release and a confidential version marked top secret with a number of agency code words and caveats. In addition, Commissioner Bell issued a non-publication direction under Section 6D3 of the Royal Commissions Act for parts of the interim report. The non-publication direction limits communication of security classified information in the confidential report. The direction was considered necessary, such as the sensitivity of the information shared with the Royal Commission, which includes highly classified national security information and operationally sensitive information, including as relevant to active investigations as well as the current prosecution. I know the honourable member will appreciate that it is critical to not disclose any operational information relating to the criminal investigation to avoid risk of prejudicing the prosecution. I can assure the member that the government takes this direction seriously, and we take all the recommendations in the interim report seriously. Our national security agencies have robust oversight, including by the Inspector-General of Intelligence and Security, as well as the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security.
The call to the honourable member for Gellibrand.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Why is the government reforming tax policy to assist Australians to own their home? What support has this policy received?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Gellibrand for the question. And indeed, we are reforming the system so that we better allow Australians, all Australians, to have the aspiration to own a home over their own head. And this has been something that has been spoken about for some time. The existing housing system is broken, and that is causing enormous frustration from Australians. It has been broken for some time, Mr Speaker, and that is why our measures in the budget have received such strong support. Chris Richardson said this: there's a lot to like in this budget. What we haven't had is a budget that tackles some of the to-do lists that Treasury and Productivity Commission have had in their top drawers for decades. This does that. CommBank, the big positive, was a much more strong, solid, credible path back to surplus. Ross Gittins, much as it pains me to say anything nice about politicians, this is a good budget. Sol Estlake, the tax reforms announced in the federal budget represent material improvements to the tax system we now have, and for that reason are to be welcomed. In addition to that, people have backed in the tax changes in housing supply. Susan Lloyd-Hurwitz, the chair of the National Housing Supply and Affordability Council, having negative gearing available for new builds is pro-supply. Harry Triguboff, the head of Meriden, of course, identified positive proposed changes. The Property Council, in the short term, the carve-out of new housing supply investment is vital to attracting capital to new projects. But, Mr Speaker, I hear some interjections once again from those opposite. And indeed, we have had support, of course, from the Shadow Treasurer in the past, criticising the existing system. The member for Canning has said that he feels the anger regularly from young Australians who feel locked out of the housing market. But, Mr Speaker, we were confronted with a situation of acknowledging a problem which is there and deciding whether we would act or not. But there's someone else who was a Treasurer, who was here today, who had an opportunity to do something about this, and he said this in his valedictory: we should be wiser and more consistent on tax concessions. He went on, in that framework, negative gearing should be skewed towards new housing so that there is an incentive to add to the housing stock rather than an incentive to speculate on existing property. That was the former member for North Sydney and the former Treasurer of Australia in the last speech that he gave on the floor of this chamber. Well, what we don't do is wait till we're going out the door and then decide to do the right thing. We do it up front.
The order, when the House comes to, the Leader of the Opposition has the call.
My question is to the Prime Minister. 3 times I have asked the Prime Minister which small businesses will be spared from his broken promises and higher taxes. 3 times the Prime Minister has refused to be honest. Prime Minister, what happened to my word is my bond?
Order. The Minister for Social Services. The Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. And once again, I inform the member asking the question that our budget is reducing a range of taxes and costs for small business in the $3.5 billion that we have put forward. And the changes, of course, to capital gains tax, of course, will result in different outcomes for different businesses across a range of systems. What we are doing is replacing one discount with another discount, a discount based upon real gains rather than nominal gains going forward, and that is what we are doing. We are consulting, as we said we would, on budget night, including with the Council of Small Business, have had formal meetings with Treasury. We're continuing to consult on those measures. We said we would do that. That is what we are doing. On Thursday we'll introduce the legislation that provides for the key measures going forward.
Give the call to the member for Braddon.
Thank you, Speaker.
Before I call the member for Braddon, I just want to remind the Leader of the Opposition, just with that language at the end of that question, it was directly reflecting on a member. So just remind everyone, regarding to be consistent, that we're not reflect directly on members. Just the last part of that question. Call to the member for Braddon.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Veteran Affairs. How is the Albanese government supporting veterans and their families?
Give the call to the Minister for Veterans Affairs and the Minister for Defence Personnel.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for Braddon for her important question. And it's been great to be able to engage with her in this place and when she was in the other place in support of the veterans in her community. And I know everybody in this chamber has respect for those who have served and have worn the Australian Defence Force uniform, including those who sit here in this place. As a government, we understand the great importance of us supporting those who serve our nation, those people who put on our uniform to serve a greater cause, that may make the ultimate sacrifice, those who come home with injuries seen and unseen. That is what every government needs to do. And in my term as the Minister for Veterans Affairs, I've heard from veterans since day one that the claims process was a nightmare, that it was taking too long and that it was too complex. And that's why our government made the biggest investment in the Department of Veterans Affairs in 3 decades, so that we could clear the backlog of claims that weren't even being looked at, so that claims are now looked at within 14 days of being received, so that initial liability claims are now processed within a matter of months instead of years. And as I've moved around the country and engaged with veterans and ex-service organisations and advocates, it's been really great to hear the positive feedback from those engaging with the system that it is indeed improving. But of course more is needed. And through the extensive consultation that we undertook over years with the veteran community, we're making the system simpler as well. And with the passage of the Vets Act from the 1st of July this year, we will have a single legislative scheme that is simpler for people to understand what they're entitled to and quicker for DVA to process claims. When it comes to the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide, we acted quickly. We already implemented 32 of the recommendations last year. 2/3 of the recommendations will be implemented by the end of this year. The Defence and Veteran Service Commission, a legislated oversight body, is already up and running, and we're taking a broader approach to veteran wellbeing, with proactive engagement with Defence to prevent injury, giving better treatment so we can get better wellbeing and lifestyle outcomes. We have a new wellbeing agency that will be established and up and running in the middle of this year, and we've expanded the Veterans and Families Hub network across the country. We've increased GP fees, we've increased report fees for GPs and specialists, and we're increasing the fees that will be paid to allied health professionals to increase access for the veteran community, and we're continuing the work on the Royal Commission recommendations. We're also doing the necessary work through a review to ensure that federally funded travel for Victoria Cross recipients and their families, like the parents of Cameron Baird VC, continue on a proper basis. We are doing the work that is needed to fulfil our nation's solemn promise to our veterans and families.
Call to the member for Clare.
To the Prime Minister. AceRes Energy Co and the New South Wales Government have just completely obliterated a Wiradjuri cultural site as they put in transmission lines for the Central West Orana Renewable Energy Zone. It's a disgrace and an outrage. When I previously raised issues of grievous environmental destruction with the Federal Environment Minister, investigations did not result in any action being taken. This could have been prevented. What's it going to take to bring these vandals to heel, and where is the accountability here?
The Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Order. Those noises that were made then, whoever's making those disparaging noises, I don't know where you think you are, but they have no place in the federal parliament. For goodness sake. Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The honourable member raises a most serious matter. I completely agree with the points that he has made, that what has happened on the face of it is utterly unacceptable. I've discussed the matter with the Minister for Indigenous Australians. I no doubt will discuss the matter with the New South Wales Government as well, because we all have some responsibilities here, including the Commonwealth. I'm happy to keep the honourable member fully advised of progress in the investigation and action that arises, but the point that he makes in that any destruction of First Nations culture is utterly unacceptable is one that I entirely agree with.
Call to the Chief Government Whip.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Why is Australia's relationship with India and the contribution of the Indian community so important to our nation? How is the Albanese Labor government engaging with our Indian diaspora?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Lalor and Chief Government Whip for her question and for her passionate engagement in her own electorate in what is a dynamic part of Melbourne that has a large and growing Indian diaspora. And yesterday afternoon I had the great pleasure of attending, along with so many members from the government, the 40th anniversary of the Australia-India Business Council. Since it was created by Prime Ministers Bob Hawke and Rajiv Gandhi, the AIBC has added focus and momentum to one of Australia's great international relationships. This is one built on friendship, respect and mutual benefit. India, of course, has the largest population in the world, but it will also grow to be the third largest economy in the world over this decade. That is an extraordinary opportunity for us in our region. We are a Pacific nation, but we are also an Indian Ocean nation as well. And our trading relationship has been enhanced by the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, and we're further drawn together through culture, education and, of course, the international language of cricket. One of my great honours has been my 2 visits so far to India as Prime Minister, but I first visited India as a backpacker way back in 1991, a long time ago, Mr Speaker. I travelled a bit differently in those days. I do want to say, if you want to understand India, get on a video bus or a train. It is a wonderful experience to see the first-hand the warmth that is there. Now, likewise, I'll have the privilege of hosting Prime Minister Modi here soon, a privilege I look forward to repeating for the second time. Like last time, Prime Minister Modi's visit will be made extraordinary by so many of the million-strong Indian Australian community, the largest growing migrant community in Australia. It's a community that has added so much through their love of this country, their spirit of generosity, and through generations of hard work and aspiration that have strengthened our economy and enhanced our society, not least, of course, all those wonderful small businesses that have benefited from the Indian diaspora. What these great Australians have done in the process is strengthen the important links between this land that is their home and future and the land of their extraordinary heritage. And I say to them, we're a better country because of you. My government will always stand up for you and your interests. We will reject any attempt to divide. And that is definitely worth noting, that we need to celebrate the contribution that Indian migrants have made and will continue to make to this country.
Give a call to the member for Page.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, in a June 2025 secret meeting, the Minister for Home Affairs committed to find a way to return ISIS sympathisers to Australia. He said the success of the first cohort arriving will be a great help to bring more to Australia. At 5:30 p.m. today, another plane load of ISIS sympathisers will touch down on Australian soil. Will the Prime Minister now admit this was all part of the Labor government's plan?
Call to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister has the call.
I just gave a speech about social cohesion. Mr. Speaker, we are...
Order. Order. Members on my left. Member for Parkes. Order. Members on my left will just cease interjecting. The Minister for Employment will cease interjecting.
Mr. Speaker.
Order. Prime Minister.
I make 3 points. Point 1. I have nothing but contempt for anyone who has any sympathy for ISIS, as I would hope everyone in this chamber would agree. This should not be an issue of partisanship. Point 2. The government has provided no assistance for these people. Point 3. Any breaches of the law will mean that these people will face the full force of the law to the extent available upon the advice of the security agencies.
Call to the member for order. The Prime Minister has concluded his answer. Order. The manager is seeking to table a document.
I said I'm seeking to table because there was so much noise. It's about your notes.
A member can table a document, but
thank you.
Resume your seat. That's no problem. The manager. If the manager wants to put it on record that he wanted to table, that's why I said he was seeking to table a document, so it was on the record. But the manager wishes to go through this. He's done.
They turned the microphone off and there was noise, so I'm allowed to table the document.
So, I am. So the order, no, members on my right, the member for Paterson will just resume.
I'm not saying
her seat.
I
the
know.
Manager just. We'll deal with this. I understand where the manager's coming from. The microphone wasn't turned on because... Order. I understand where he's coming from. I'm trying to help him out here, but the Leader of the House...
Mr Speaker, in the first instance, the member has made a reflection on the Speaker in terms of the microphone being turned off. For every member of this House, if you don't have the call, your microphone's not on. And if you decide to stand up and speak without having the call, then your microphone's not going to be on. That's not a reflection on the Speaker. I would add, second to that, that the Speaker then put directly to the House is leave granted for the document that you're requesting to be tabled, and the answer was no.
Yeah. All right, we're going to... Yeah, look. The manager wishes to clarify this matter for the benefit of the House.
Thank you. I wasn't making a reflection on the Speaker. It's Yes, it's not the Speaker who turns the microphone off. It's done by broadcasting. Right? No, but broadcasting...
Order. Members on my right. Let's give the manager a fair go. Order. Members on my right.
He's really working hard to hide this.
Members on my right.
He's working hard to hide this.
Paul Wool.
Have you read it? Have you read it?
As you know from years of experience on this side, they shouldn't turn the microphone off until the Speaker said...
This is your minister trying to get ISIS sympathisers in.
Well,
all right.
Then they should have turned it off.
Order. The member for Chisholm.
Get across it.
The member for Chisholm is now warned. So the manager, you've made your point. The microphone is now on. You've made that point. It's on the record. You've asked to table a document. It hasn't been granted leave. We'll now move on to the next question.
No, but, Speaker, I didn't get the chance to say what document it is. The document is the notes from Save the Children for their meeting with the Minister for Home Affairs, and that's an important
Resume your seat. Okay. Just for abundance of clarity, it is up to the Speaker's discretion to when it is not broadcasting, it is my call of when we issue the call. But we have now dealt with it. The manager's been given a fair go. We now move on. I just hope everyone understands the process now. A good learning experience for everyone. Order. We'll now hear from the member for Patterson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Patience is a virtue. My question is to the Minister for Health. What action has the Albanese Labor government taken to help Australian women going through menopause and perimenopause? Why is it important to talk openly about this health issue, Minister?
The call to the Minister for Health and Ageing and the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member for Patterson for her open talk about so many health issues, including this, not just in the Hunter but right across Australia. And she joined a large number of women from this side of the House, Mr Speaker, yesterday to launch the first ever menopause and perimenopause information campaign. And I wish, Mr Speaker, the Assistant Minister for Health could answer this question under standing orders, because she has done the hard work to lead this campaign and led the launch yesterday with a collection of terrific women who for years have been campaigning to end the silence, to break the taboo around perimenopause and menopause, and frankly, Mr Speaker, to give Australia's women the information that they need and deserve during this part of their life. Mr Speaker, a Senate inquiry last term found that women frankly don't get the support and the information that they need from the health system in this area. Remarkably, it revealed that medical degrees include only a few hours of training on menopause across 5 or 6 years of education. And that's why we've ramped up training for existing doctors and health professionals. It's why we're updating the clinical guidelines to ensure that Australia's women get the best possible care and support. And a new Medicare menopause health assessment item, Mr Speaker, has already been used by more than 105,000 Australian women since it commenced last July. The inquiry also highlighted the lack of new menopause hormone treatments on the PBS for more than 20 years, in spite of there being several innovative products on the market through that period, Mr Speaker. So last year, the government finally added 3 widely used treatments to the PBS for the first time in 2 decades, treatments used by about 150,000 women every single year, saving them up to $580, Mr Speaker, every year as well. And yesterday, as I said, we responded to yet another recommendation from that terrific Senate inquiry to launch this national information campaign, to break that silence, Mr Speaker, and to help women entering perimenopause in particular recognise the symptoms and know where they can go for help and further information. Shelley Horton and Amanda Smythe were 2 of the terrific women who joined us yesterday and bravely told their stories to the media, stories of entering perimenopause frankly not really knowing what was happening in their body and in their mind or where to get help. And I want to thank them and all the other campaigners who were behind this campaign, because it will ensure that women like Shelley and Amanda and so many like them will finally get the information and the support that they deserve as soon as they need it.
Prime Minister.
Further questions be posted on the notice paper.
Call to the Leader of the House.
Speaker, these documents are tabled in accordance with the list circulated to the honourable members earlier today. Full details of the documents will be recorded in the votes and proceedings.
Leader of the House.
Speaker, I move that leave of absence until the 2nd of July 2026 be given to the honourable member for Longman for personal reasons.
I'll put the question. Those opinion.
Aye.
I'll put the question. Those opinions say aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. I received a letter from the honourable member for Goldstein proposing the Leader of the House on a point of order.
Mr Speaker, under standing orders, it's quite specific that for a matter of public importance, a member of parliament can only nominate one matter of public importance. The member for Goldstein today has submitted 2 letters, and in the first he's suggesting that the debate on the issue he wants actually not be held today but be held in November of last year. That was a sitting day, and so it would appear on the face of it, given that the standing order says that a member can only put forward a matter of public importance. If we are to agree with what the member for Goldstein wants, then effectively, in the true tradition of them at the moment, looking back into the past, is suggesting that the issue he wants should be debated on the 26th of November 2025, is what he's written.
Order. I can clean this up. Order. The member for Herbert. I will just clear this up for the House. The Leader of the House is correct. There were 2 letters by the member for Goldstein. As there was a oversight in the first, an incorrect. It was an incorrect date for the House, and in the interest of transparency, the member for Goldstein issued another letter, and I have approved that as the. I'm sure it was an innocent mistake, and these does occur from time to time. I make mistakes all the time, and I always own up to them. So the leader is correct, but we found a way forward, as my policy, to try and allow debate to occur in the House, namely that I have received a letter from the honourable member for Goldstein proposing that a definite matter of public importance be submitted to the House for discussion, namely the Albanese government bad faith 2026-2027 budget of broken promises, higher taxes and fewer homes that pulls the ladder of aspiration from Australians. I call upon those honourable members to approve of the proposed to rise in their places and give the call to the member for Goldstein.